Yes, people, we're live. It's Black Eyes TV in the house once again, bringing you more informative entertainment and information and knowledge and wisdom as we keep doing throughout the ages. Today we got a panel show. We've got a few people sharing their thoughts, but if you saw the flyer, we've got Professor KHONSU and our friend Samuel BENTA joining us today, heading up the charge to talk about self-development of our kids, our children. Um, and yeah, so let's go in without further ado. I've got my co-host as always, Mr. Riggs, by my side. Speak to the people then, Riggsy.
Yep. So this is Mr. Riggs, as you know, UK tour guide to the rest of the world, giving you the information, giving you all the details and everything that's going on within the community, all the way to the African diaspora, to all the way to the African people. As you know, it's the year of the African, and we are going into the dilemmas of understanding that it's all about family. But we have to start somewhere in the fact that it's a time where we have to go to the beginning. We have to go to the roots of that family, which is the child. So we want to be able to establish to overcoming the understanding of the child and able to see what kind of forms of development and what kind of things that we can do to helping the child grow to a certain age. So in that perspective, as we have Professor KHONSU, who will be later on coming on, which we'll be talking about certain things of Manhood Academy and things like that. But further ado, I just want some of the people that are going to be on our panel to introduce themselves. Madam Melanie.
Peace, brother.
Okay.
Peace to everyone on the panel.
Okay. Brother E.
Yo, bless up everybody, what's up family?
And we have the beautiful Florence.
Hey, greetings everyone, good evening.
Okay, so now we're going to go into the dialogue with our brother, Mr. Banta himself, Mr. Samuel
Benta.
I'd like to
slap his face. You just came back and he's doing it again.
Yeah, banter. Because I like to banter with him. But anyway,
okay,
now,
that's okay.
his name is Benta. So let's kick it off for us, brother. Give us some information, some knowledge.
Introduce yourself, brother. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll lead into the subject.
Okay. Name is Samuel Benta. Multi-dimensional being. Man of many talents. Acting, writing, directing, speaking, teaching. Oh my gosh, I could go on for ages. We are unlimited beings. Let's not limit ourselves with just doing the one thing. I believe there's a saying. That saying is it's, oh gosh, help me out here, guys. It's that saying, was it, you know a lot of things and you're master of none or something?
Master of none. Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades and master of none.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. I personally choose not to believe that because I think it's very limiting, because you can master any kind of subject area in your life, really. But just going more into what I do, which I've already spoke about. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for bringing me on this again. I know it's been probably like a year since we've last done this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different story. But what I love about this subject in regards to self-development for the youth, it's a really touching subject to me, because being the age I am of 32, I know I don't look it. I remember back in the days of being in school, and literally all we was taught was whatever it was that they gave us, and all academic subjects were at the top of the hierarchy and arts were at the bottom, like it meant nothing, when the arts is pretty much where we are at, especially as Black people. You know, we love our music, we love our performance. It's very, very big with us. And I feel that for a long time it has been suppressed a lot in the educational system. So over the years, as I've been studying more about myself and more about personal development and being a man of the arts myself, I thought with the younger generation, because I understand that they are still being taught the same curriculum from when I was at school, I knew there was a problem, because you can't educate someone the same information and let's say in 2065 they'll retire, but the world is constantly changing all the time, but you're teaching them the same information. So really and truly, the teachers of today have mainly just been YouTube and Google, and there's a saturation of information that's out there. So where I thought I could come into the equation was creating a self-empowerment drama school, which utilizes drama, acting, performance, and also personal development, understanding of self, and more importantly, understanding how the mind works with your awareness, and also how you can utilize all of that personal development information and fusing it with the craft of acting, which will make you a better performer. It'll make you more of an all-rounder, and more importantly, a self-starter and a confident and happier person, with more understanding what's going on in your mind and in around your environment. We are responsible for our lives 100%, and I think it's very important that each and every one of us uses our gifts to give away this information with whatever vessel that we are using, whatever vehicle that we are using. Some people use music, some people use performance. There are people out there that are authors, people that are teachers, whatever. And you know, it's our duty and it's our responsibility to use that for the common good, for the greater whole. So I don't know when the time is, guys, where I'll be able to like show my screen, which is basically just an image of the school that I'm going to be launching next month. But do let me know.
Yeah, we can share it as soon as you want.
Okay, well, I'll share it as I'm talking now.
Yeah, do that now. Do that now, bro.
All right, let me just quickly find it. 1 second.
So people, you know the routine: like, share, subscribe to the video. Yeah, share the link out so we can get people on hearing this good information. As Benta said, he's been on before, so if you're not aware of him, or you don't know that he's been on Black Eyes TV 7 before, if you go back in our back chat, you will see shows with our brother talking about, again, other self-affirmation, talking about other subjects to do with self, building of confidence, applying your skills and such like that. So please go ahead and check that out. Go in, brother.
Yeah, thanks for that. So it was literally, this was actually supposed to start last September, but I had a few issues. But beginning of this year, I felt it was a better time for this to actually be here. I think it's no accident that recently there's been a lot of pushing in the media regarding Black people and mental health and stuff like that. I personally think that all that is rigged, because to be honest, it's always kind of been here, but there's no need to rub it in face. And for those who know, you are buying an experience of what you are paying attention to, because that's really the proper currency of everyone. It's our attention. If we pay attention to something, we're asking for that experience. So although I can be in the media, I'm not a fan of what the masses are putting out there for us to take on. And why I'm saying that in regards to the whole mental health thing, I remember we spoke about this last time I was on, is that as a young Black person, if you are not seeing someone that looks like you on screen, you you find it hard to kind of figure out where you kind of fit in with the whole grand scheme of things. And if the only image that is given to you is something that depicts a stereotype, or black people having hard times, or slave images, etc., etc., you know, that's all the information that you're given of who you are. And the educational system will do a very good job at making sure any information they give of you as a black person is very minimal. So it's like you never really existed, or if you are, you're just kind of like an alien. So why I'm saying that is the importance of doing something like this. And this isn't just for black students, by the way, guys. This is very universal. But the only reason I'm talking about it in regards to black people is because, you know, I would say we have been starving more in regards to all the information that has been hidden from us, whether we are consciously aware of it or unconsciously aware of it. And like I said, I have decided to create a school with a syllabus that can infuse both of them together. So it's enjoyable whilst you're doing it and you're learning, because with emotion, automatically you have access to the subconscious mind, which means you're going to learn a lot more quicker when you're moving around and doing fun things. It's like when you listen to a song and you enjoy it, you're more likely going to learn it because there's melodies. So it's very scientific how I've put together how I'm going to be passing on information through the classes. It's part-time, so it doesn't interfere with any like children's main school education. This is something additional that can be done on a Tuesday and Thursday evening. And the class launches Tuesday, the 5th of February. And it will be a free class for 9 to 17-year-olds to attend. It's split into two, where we have tweens 9 to 12 and teenagers 13 to 17, and they're at different times. For anyone who is watching this, this is going to be located in Wembley, Northwest London. It's the first of its kind. And any information you want to find, just please go onto the website youngalisters.com. Why it's called Young A-Listers is because we've heard of Hollywood A-list celebrities. This is about giving the youth a positive self-image that they are A-listers now in their own life movie. So that's what I'd like to share with you guys. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you a question, quick one, right? Before we go,
yeah,
in,
go on.
Is people want to know, like, what kind of things would you be actually doing at this Young A-Listers?
Okay, that's fine. Just hold on one second. Let me come out of the screen share mode. Am I out of screen share mode?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out of screen share. Okay, so there's going to be, right, where do I start? Okay, so there's a basic framework for how classes are going to be conducted, and the context of what's going to be taught will vary depending on the age group. The core is mainly going to be personal development, and drama is going to be around it. So I think it's important because it's grounding an individual for longevity, being a more healthier performer in mind, body, and spirit. As the school evolves, more subject areas will be taught in regards to the arts. So in regards to personal development, there's introduction to personal centeredness, creative visualization techniques, relaxation, meditation, positive affirmations, success in team working, learning to listen, which is more importantly, without judgment as well, confidence building through public speaking. I think it's a statistic that public speaking is the second most highest fear in the world. I think death is like the first one, I think. Science of the mind, thinking into results, law of attraction. In regards to the drama side of things, literally improvisation, voice, engaging creatively in storytelling, showing awareness of characterization, script analysis, the business of acting, casting directors, agencies, etc. But more importantly, because I produce shows as well, it's giving these youngsters experience and opportunity to actually learn whilst being filmed or being on stage. There's monologue mastery as well, also one-on-one mentoring, visiting TV and film sets whenever we've got productions going on, so they don't feel like they are literally just in a class all the time. But obviously that's going to be down the line, because we're just starting off the whole school. So yeah.
Okay, so is there anyone on the panel that would like to take themselves off the mic and ask a question?
Dun dun dun.
Is there anyone on the panel that would like to ask a question?
Blessings, family.
Again,
Blessings,
look,
everyone.
let's
Go to Black
Yeah.
House.
brother. I want to throw this out to the panel here, because again, today's show is about the self-development. So, from everybody's opinion, so what do you feel is one of the key elements that we need to work on when we're talking about the ages of 5 to like 13 or 5 to 12? What are the key things that come across element of children?
You're cutting out.
They're lacking in.
You're cutting out.
What they're lacking in, they need.
Okay. Well, the younger they are, the easier it is to work with them, because the older you are, the harder it is to deprogram old behaviors and ways. But what I would say, because I think the age group you said was 5 to 12, I personally wouldn't work with anyone at the age of 5. But what I do know at that age is subconscious mind is wide open. Conscious faculties are not even fully developed yet. So they're literally just soaking in any and everything. So what I would say from that age, well, in fact, from birth to that age, is literally making sure the environment has great stimulus around, such as like positive words or great dialogue coming from the parents or any older siblings. And when I say great dialogue, I mean positive dialogue. Also as well, while they're sleeping, and I even do this when I'm sleeping, even up to this day, is I literally go to sleep and I have something playing in the background of positive affirmations, because that's when our conscious mind shuts down and it literally just goes right into the subconscious and just nurturing that. Another thing that could be done as well is creative visualization. So it could be doing guided visualizations with the youngsters. So just sit them down in a nice relaxed state, and you're giving them an image to imagine, and you want to make sure it's positive as possible. But more importantly, you want to tell them to picture themselves in that picture that they are visualizing in their mind. So it starts off, it's basically the cause for greater effects to come, and that's what sets off the vibration as well. And more importantly, when they're doing that, it's to keep them doing that exercise until they get in a good feeling state, like they can actually feel that that's happening there and there at that moment. Another thing I would say is, whatever you do not want in their minds, don't present it to them. In other words, I wouldn't have a 5-year-old sit down while I'm watching, I don't know, some kind of movie that's got foul language or sexual content or swear words or violence. I wouldn't put that in their mind. I would make sure that they are at a certain age where I know that they have a certain level of integrity and understanding to understand what's right and what's wrong. So yeah, that's what I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay, so like in that perspective, B2, you was going to ask a question. Can you hear me, B2?
Yes, brother Terry. Blessings, everyone. Sorry, I joined late, so apologies if you've already gone through this, Samuel. But just for my own clarification, do you have a background in the entertainment industry?
Yeah, I started off as an actor when I was 19 years old. You can Google me. I've done quite a lot of stuff. The Bills, Silent Witness, a whole season of Power Rangers. A lot of the children know me from that. My own show, All About the Mackenzies, which is on YouTube. It was also on ITV. Not only just acting, I've been writing and directing as well, mainly my own show. And the brand new series, I'm actually going to be filming that this year. So yeah, a lot of my background has been in entertainment.
Oh, cool, great, that's good. Okay, yeah, no, I'm just trying to get up to speed.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to ask a question?
Does anyone else want to chime in?
Flo?
Shy.
Hello.
Yeah, if there's a question you would like to ask in the proceedings, because I know what you deal with, sister, and is there any kind of questions that you would like to ask Samuel BENTA about what he is doing?
BENTA.
BENTA.
No, I don't have any questions. I just think what Samuel's talking about sounds really good and very, very positive. I think it's really good to kind of capture the child when you can, because the saying is, show me a man at 7, show me a child at 7 and I'll show you the man.
That's right.
So I think it's really positive what you're going to be doing. And yeah, I think a lot of it in terms of what our children need today is a lot of grounding, and also, you know, to know that they're loved and they're feeling secure, because a lot of young people don't have that today. And it's planting that seed of letting them know who their identity is as well, what their identity is, who they are, and empowering them from that. So I think, yeah, that's really important. So I don't have any questions. I just wanted to add to what you were saying.
Oh, thank you very much. I'd love to get your details at the end of this as well, actually.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
she'll give some introduction as well in a little bit. Okay, so Melanie, if you have any questions from the stateside, or George Macon, in the perspective of the other side of the waters.
Right, I'm just coming in, so right now I'm just listening, trying to get a grasp.
Okay, I can see you're driving.
Yeah, I'm on the road. I'm when y'all see the county. I'm out here in White Mansville right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm outside the city.
E, is there any questions you would like to ask E?
Not at this moment, but yeah, man, I commend the brother for, being an active member in the community, trying to get things.
And that's what you do, E, as well. You're into the self-development.
Yeah, personal development. To me, in it, I can just see that he's trying to use stuff that he's passionate about and bring development through others and connect that. And for me, I'm more interested in the business side. So with personal development, I do try and relate that also to business development and stuff like that. So I can identify connecting a passion to wanting to help and to train in it.
Samuel, on the business aspect of things, on the business, as he has said, on the business aspect of things, he's more interested in that kind of perspective on how have you created it on the business level? Because sometimes we have to understand that even though we put these things out there, we have to know how to maintain it to give it its longevity of what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
So in the business aspects, what are you doing in that aspect?
Okay. Well, I created the website. I did that by myself. In regards to any marketing and stuff like that, I didn't really apply for any business funds or whatever. I literally just used like my own money, and I bought all the marketing material that I needed. And literally just word of mouth. I literally just contacted people I knew, like for example, certain newspapers and what else? There's the Brent magazine as well. There's also the Families magazine, because I'm looking at where parents are going to be seeing this advert, because it's going to be the parents that are the ones that's going to be investing into it. Basically every new person would have like a taster class that they would go to, but the way it is set up is that classes are paid for as and when all the students come. And I basically recognized this when I used to go to one years ago. There was one in Wembley years ago that I used to go to, and they had the same type of model for it. So basically the classes, the school itself will take care of itself. I've already had quite a few students that have booked classes already, and that's with hardly any marketing. You know, when the issues and stuff go out there of the publications, then I do know that it's going to attract more, and with the value that they're going to get and the enjoyment that they're getting from it, I know I'll never go hungry from it in terms of new students wanting to join, because whenever it's a cool thing for the youngsters, they're going to let everyone know about it. So I've got no worries with that whatsoever.
Okay. All right. We're going to turn it up a little bit in the form that we're going to speak to our sister Florence.
Hey.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
she's going to give us a slight aspect of who she is and what she is about and what she is doing within the community. So, sister, just speak to the public to tell people who you are and what you're about and what your aim is.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My name's Florence Cole, and I've always worked with young people. So again, Solomon, I like the sound of what you're doing. And Samuel, sorry. Everyone's getting your name wrong this evening. Should we just call you SB, yeah?
That's fine. I like that.
So yeah, I started out as a mentor at the age of 19, and that was with an organisation called Dalston Youth Project, and I was working with young people who were on the verge of crime or being excluded from school. And I worked with, I didn't know at the time, but they'd given me one of the hardest young people to work with. And at the end of that, we had a graduation for all the young people. And it was a year-long voluntary work, but I realised after working with that young person, my work wasn't finished. And it was through this young person that I actually went on to work with a lot more young people. So then I qualified as a young person solicitor. So the work that I do now is for young people who are being unfairly excluded from school and who have special education needs, and young people who are in care and who are homeless. So I'm really passionate about that. And what I'm trying to do for the community is share my knowledge, because what I have found is that when a young person has been excluded, that is when the parent comes to us. But there are a lot of preventative measures that could take place before that. But we don't always tell parents that. The schools don't always tell parents that. The system don't tell parents that. A lot of people are even unaware that you can challenge an exclusion. So I've been trying to set up workshops, and I went down to the Manhood Academy on Saturday. I was on the radio previously, the Saturday before that, just to explain that, you know, I'm going to be setting up workshops to empower parents and to basically raise their awareness about how to navigate the education system. So that's one of my things. The other thing that I do is I'm also a mediator. So I can mediate. I've mediated for parents and children, a lot of children who are having difficulty at home. And I am also an advocate as well. So I can go into schools, I can go to meetings with parents and talk about what the issues are and how better to support a child if they're at the verge of exclusion. I, like yourself, SB, I've always been interested in theatre. If my parents weren't so strict, I wouldn't have gone into law. I wanted to do theatre. So I did go to Anna Shear Theatre. I also attending the Identity School of Acting. I've done a few performances in the past and used to be with Soul to Soul. So that's kind of like my background. My background is quite creative, and I do believe in a lot of creativity for young people, because the issue these days is academia isn't always the best way for every child. I struggled because I'm dyslexic, and the way that my mind works is in a creative way. And I've often had a lot of parents saying, "Oh, my child's not settling, my child's not settling." And I'm thinking, well, actually, your child is probably better off doing something more creative, because the mind is different. It works differently. And something that I always say when, I've got a lot of young people who have got special needs, a lot of young people who they term autistic, I say that they're artistic because they are very creative in other areas. It's just that creativity hasn't been tapped into. But with a bit of time, support, and effort, then, they can flourish. So I think that, that's really important. And then the flip side of that, what I also do is I'm also very interested in astrology. So I've studied astrology as well. So yeah, that's me. I kind of consider myself as an all-rounder. And yeah, I just want to go out into the community now and just share my knowledge and empower people. So that's kind of generally what I'm about. Yeah.
Okay, so like in the scenarios that we had the dialogue on the Saturday where you were showing the parents, because there's a lot of parents out there that just take their children and pick up their children and drop them and bring them back, and they don't really investigate or even check up on their children, even when they feel that the school is more superior than them, and they find it very difficult to able to dealing with the situation. I just want you to give the public as kind of a scenario or something so that they can understand exactly kind of what you do.
So may get a lot of cases whereby parents are being told after the summer holidays not to bring their child back to school, and the parent will just accept what the school is saying. And then it's sort of like a month goes by, 2 months go by, and the parents like, they haven't heard anything from the education department. And then they start making inquiries. And so sometimes the school has said to them, "Oh, don't bring your child back," but for no reason. And it turns out when we investigate it a bit more, that it's because of their league tables. That child may not be doing that well, and they're supposed to send work home to the parents, but they don't. So that would what we would consider as being as an unlawful exclusion. Sending your child home because they haven't got the right uniform on. They shouldn't be doing that, because that is also an unlawful exclusion. We've got things like where young people end up getting permanently excluded, then they end up in a pupil referral unit. But sometimes that transition can take quite a long time, and it shouldn't. And they're supposed to have homework sent home to them, and they don't. So these are the sorts of things that we're challenging there. There's been other cases where, I've had young people being sent home because their afro is too big. So we're challenging things like that, there's so many different things that that come up, and if I wasn't doing this work, I wouldn't believe what is actually happening to a lot of our children in this education system. There's also the issue of a lot of young people who have got special education needs, and they are being sent to an isolation room with no work, no support. They just sat there. And the times that I've had to visit young people in prisons, when I visit in schools, sometimes it's no different. It's sort of like the school system is a pipeline to the prison system. So there's a lot of stuff going on. The other thing is since I've been doing this work, I've had 6 actually 5-year-olds and 2 8-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 10-year-olds who have all been permanently excluded. Majority of those have got special education needs. Other children being accused of rape when they haven't actually raped anybody. So it's quite vast in terms of, the experiences that I have and what I've come across. So there are a lot of scenarios that, you know, people are totally unaware of. And one of the things that I strongly impress on a lot of parents when I'm doing my workshops is you must make sure that you read the school's policies. You must know about the school that you're sending your child to. You're able to hold them accountable if you are aware of what their policies say, because a lot of the time, some of the schools aren't actually adhering to some of their own policies. And also the other issue is that now a lot of schools have become academies. It sometimes can be even harder to try and navigate the system because they're sort of like accountable to themselves, so to speak, whereas mainstream schools are accountable to the local authority. So one of the things I would always say is make sure you read the policies. I had a young person who was permanently excluded for selling sweets, but when I actually read the policy, he should have only got a 2-hour detention. So this messes up the child's life. They're taken out of their school system, away from their peers. They feel really bad about it. The whole family feels bad about it because the way that the letters are written as well, it comes down quite harsh on the parents. So parents who are experiencing this for the first time, they find it very difficult to deal with. Obviously, I'm seeing it day in, day out, so I've kind of become a little bit immune to it and I can support them. But it's not a nice experience for somebody who is going through that, and particularly with the child, because one of the main things that I notice is it takes away this child's self-esteem. And it's very difficult sometimes at a young age to build that up. You know, you can really break someone or build them up just from giving them that self-esteem and empowerment, or taking that self-esteem and empowerment away from them. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Richie, are you there? Okay. Is there anyone on the panel that needs?
Well, I'm here. Listen, what's very, very true. Because again, the academy schools with all the rage right now, you do definitely have their policies and look at their curriculum. Mixed bag now, and I mean there are good examples, most definitely, that I found of some academies old school curriculum. But as the sister stressed, you have to look at those policies. My young, he's about to start secondary next year, so I'm actually waiting now to receive the choices that we've made, see if he got into the school that he wants. But again, people enough about being vigilant to look at the policies of the school before you enroll your child. Another interesting thing I also went through with my oldest son, there was a period of time where issues with a couple teachers, and again they tried to put him in isolation, as you said, a lot more than necessary. And again, it disrupts the schoolwork because they're not learning at the same pace. They big chunks of work, which again impacts on behavior again. And I had to go to the school and, you know, actually have a meeting with them and tell them no more exclusions without prior notice to me, because silly, and it was a tool being used inappropriately as far as I was concerned. And it was definitely messing up their education. So I'm with you on that one, sister, definitely.
Yeah. And you see, when that type of thing is happening, it's always very good to look at the school's exclusions policy and their behavioural policy. And if a child has a special education need, or they might be struggling, then or sometimes we term it as additional need, because not every child has a special need. And I'm not a fond, I don't believe in boxing children or people into under certain labels. I don't like it. But it is always good to look at their special education needs policy, behavioural policy, and the exclusions policy. Because again, as I said, sometimes what they say they're supposed to be doing, they don't do. Or sometimes the policies can be silent. They say nothing on certain things. So it's about questioning, you know, are they being inclusive? Have they considered certain things? Because I can always remember going with a family to represent a 5-year-old, and the policies that they were using, and the school was under special measures as well, and the policies they were using were like 5 years old. And then they had written a letter to say they reinstated the child back into the school, but they'd written a letter to me to say that since that hearing, they didn't want to exclude a 5-year-old again, and that they were going to look at their policies and update them again. So it's, you know, it's about, you know, holding people accountable. And, you know, the schools do have, you know, a massive responsibility on their hands, because they're not just dealing with your child, they're dealing with everybody. You know, they have got a duty of care, and sometimes it can be very difficult. But at the same time, when we're seeing the same issue coming up over and over again, well, you know, they do need to be accountable, and they need to make sure that, you know, they're doing the right thing by the children. And that is what I am passionate about. School days, as far as I can remember, my school days were my best days. And I believe that's how they should be, you know, and I'm still good friends with a lot of my school friends now, you know, but a lot of young people do not enjoy school. They don't enjoy it. And this is where you also get a lot of people, parents, homeschooling their children now as well. So,
to say, I mean, besides us sending our kids, the point that you just made there, where you're saying that we have to remember that the school has, you know, 1,300, 1,000 children, 800 children to look after. So we got to understand that the real responsibility always comes to us as parents. It can't be any other way. It can't be the school first and then you. And this is something we definitely have to be proactive on as parents. If you don't initiate things in the home, from homework to certain behavioral traits, don't expect the school to do anything with your child. It doesn't work like that. Because, you know, again, child can't be controlled by the parent, then don't expect a teacher to be able to tell your child anything. Go on, sister.
Do you know, it was interesting what SB was saying about how to relax a child and to do meditation before they sleep. Well, I think it is really, really important that these children are not on their computers before they go to sleep. They shouldn't be on their phones before they go to sleep. At least an hour to 2 hours before they're going to bed, they should be off that phone, you know, and the computers and the else. And yes, it's this technology is their generation and they're whiz kids at it. But at the same time, it is kind of dumbing the brain, and it's dumbing their learning. You know, back in the day, we could tell, I knew all the telephone numbers off by heart. You know, we didn't need these computers, but obviously it's the way going forward, and it has its pros and cons. But I think for young people, they need to be off these computers and not be spending so much time on them, because it does affect them in their learning and in their relaxing and in their meditation as well.
Lawrence, we're going to get along just fine.
Do you want to add to that?
Is there anyone on the panel that to ask questions?
I could, SB, I could come to your school and give some parent workshops.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. It's been really interesting listening to you. I think I did a double take when you said a child got sent home because their afro was too big.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I just thought, well, at the same time, why can't they send the white girl home with her hair too long?
Yeah.
You know, that's just out of order.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, man, it's anyway.
And this is where it goes back to the home, when I was talking about it's really important for a child to know their identity. That has to be instilled in them, so that when they go out into society, whether it be work or school or college, they can stand firm knowing who they are. And so nobody can tell them about their afro. It's wrong, you know?
Is there anyone on the panel that would like to ask any questions?
Or make any statements in regards to what we're talking about? Build on that. Elaborate some more, people.
There's so much that I can say, guys, but I've actually got to go because I was only.
That's okay, because we've got Professor KHONSU coming in. He's just making his way So he'll be coming on and talking about the Manhood Academy and all that stuff.
Awesome.
So yeah, we was appreciated, Samuel. So
that's okay. Thank you once again, Florence. It was great hearing from you. Sorry, I couldn't hear anyone else. I'll have to catch up listening back to it afterwards. Terry, afterwards, can you send me everyone's contacts, please?
No problem.
All right, take care, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, take care, brother. Appreciate it.
B2. B2, brother B2.
Yes, brother, yes.
Is there any questions you would like to ask the lady in regarding of what she's just had the dialogue on?
No, not really. I mean, I definitely understand her angle, and I can definitely see the value in having someone who's on your side to help you navigate the school systems, because it can be overwhelming. I think parents need to take an objective look at what it is, the institution as a whole of school and its function. I think it's a bit too easy to sort of use school as a daycare service.
Yeah.
And not really be as involved as parents should be. But I think when if you was to really be fair in critically assessing what school is, for the most part, it does what it intends to, and that's an unfortunate truth. But it's not necessarily geared in our children's best interest. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Oh, B2, give them a dialogue of who you are and what you do, and your partner and what they do, what she does. Give the public of what it is about.
Okay, so in regards to schooling, we homeschool our children. My missus, she's a teacher, she's a tutor, and yeah, that's pretty much it, really.
And in your experience, how have you found the homeschooling?
Best thing ever to happen to us, to be honest. It's a choice that we'd never go back on. It's a shame because Black families are underrepresented in the community, and the sort of perception that people have is that by homeschooling, your child will be losing out on socialization, which of course isn't the case, because people socialize at every opportunity they have to. Where there's other people in and amongst them, they will have the opportunity to socialize. And actually, besides the fact that there aren't many Black families in homeschooling, there is actually quite a diverse range of people within the community. It is a vast community. Homeschooling doesn't mean restricted to the home. You know what I mean? My kids personally, they go to a lot of reoccurring things that almost resemble school, but it's more parent-led. So as well, to homeschool, it actually forces a parent to be more involved. Do you know what I mean? And I think that is probably a bit of the conflict or reason why it's not easily accessible for a lot of parents where they have work commitments. You know, so, but yeah, it's the best thing that's happened to us, and we wouldn't be going back. Fortunately for us as well, my kids have never gone to school, so they've been homeschooled from the beginning.
I've actually found the children that are homeschooled, they actually excel. They do really, really well. I think they do better than some of the children in mainstream.
Yeah, no, do you know what? One thing I will say, obviously homeschooling is an umbrella term, and there's a lot of different styles below that umbrella term. But one thing that I find common in it is across the board in homeschooling is children are given the opportunity to develop a real genuine relationship with their education. Yeah. And for us, from my perspective, that's where the longevity lies. You know, it's not something that they can't wait to end as soon as their age allows for them to. It's not something they're rushing to end as soon as they hit 18 or 16 or whatever it might be. So I mean, it's something that they just continue with naturally. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
I think
as well. Also, sorry, one last thing. As part of the homeschooling thing, our measurement for success is a lot more personalized to the individual, whereas the bar for success in school It is very much controlled, and there's a huge percentage of children that just don't meet that bar. They don't meet that standard, and that is interpreted as being a failure, and that's not a good place to leave a child. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
I feel it's a lot more organic homeschooling. And it kind of reminds me, some of the parents that I've spoken to and the young people that I've worked with who have been homeschooled, it's almost sometimes equivalent to the principles of Montessori school or a Steiner school, where they learn from their environment. You know, they're not always just sitting at a desk or reading a book. It's what's around you. What can you learn from that, you know? So, yeah, good to you and your queen. That's good. Well done to you.
That definitely has to
Thank you,
happen. As
sister.
someone made the comment that Western education is not for our black children, and I think you see what that point that you just made about nature. This is a thing what we're lacking in a lot in the education. That's why I like what the brother was saying, that obviously you got to learn how to teach your natural surroundings and observational science. We have to definitely get back to that. And again, it stimulates the senses a lot more certain times than the classroom approach. So we have to remember to switch it up and, you know, bring continuity. They're talking about trying to stimulate our children. And again, they're individuals. So each experience is different. Each child responds to different things. But I definitely think culturally, there is a different paradigm going on, and again, our kids develop different. Remember this when it comes to how we choose, speak to, and relate to our children. I just want to say that.
Hi, Sister Nika, are you there? Is Nika there? Brother E. Brother E?
Yes, bro.
Yeah.
I am here, by the way.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted you to give us some kind of insight of your forms of development of how you see the youth of today, especially in your creativity of what you do and the aspects of using music and filming and all that.
Is that to me, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, you just caught me off guard. The youth, I think, to be honest with you, going back to what Florence said, I think it's really important that children are able to express themselves in a form of creativity to help them with their confidence, to help them express themselves, and also just to have another outlet where they can channel, you know, certain energies sometimes that can be labeled as having ADHD or anything else that can have quite a negative impact on them, especially when they're in a system with people that sometimes are just there to kind of teach them and not necessarily understand other elements to their personality. So with me and with what I do, in terms of, like, you know, music and drama and creating videos and stuff, I've found that when I've worked with kids in the past, it helps them to be more sure of themselves and just to be more expressive. So I think it's a good path that you guys are kind of going down at the moment, from what I've heard so far.
If there was any question you would like to ask Sister Florence, what would you ask?
Well, I had quite a lengthy chat with Sister Florence on Saturday.
So it's good to share it.
So yeah, I mean, what would I ask Sister Florence? I mean, I suppose I would ask her, in what way, what sort of program would she, if she had an hour with a child, what sort of program does she feel would be most effective to try and get the most out of them in that time?
Wow. Never really thought about that. What would be most effective? Okay, if we're talking in terms of subjects, I definitely want to be taking them out into nature.
Okay.
out into nature just to calm their mind
Yeah.
and get them grounded, or I'd be doing some kind of meditation or grounding work with them. And just, I would want to be enhancing their intuition, that element of it, because it's something that my dad always used to say to us when we were growing up is, what does your intuition tell you? What is your gut telling you, you know? And learning how to trust themselves and trust the answers, because there's no right or wrong answer, you know? So learning that creativity and being a creative person myself, I think I would want to do quite a lot of creativity. So it would be the drama, it would be sports, it would be painting, and just learning a lot of literature as well, different types of literature. I would want to find from the child what they would be interested in, not what I particularly think they need, but what do they need from me? What do they want to develop on? And work with each individual child as an individual as opposed to a collective. Obviously, there are some things that, you know, the curriculum will say, well, they've got to know the maths, they've got to know the English. But outside of that, I would like it to be more creative, kind of like play therapy, because they normally talk about play therapy for young people who have got special needs or something, but that's not always the case, because we could all, you know, and music is so important. And I would definitely have a music class, because I love music myself, and also, you know, just teaching them the origins of where the music came from. And, you know, if we're having a history lesson, history would definitely need to be in there to know where they're from and where their roots, because as I was saying earlier, I don't know if you heard earlier when I was saying identity is so important.
Yeah.
Because if you can plant that seed of identity into the child, then, you know, when they're going along in life, and again, this is sort of like the teachings from my own father, because my own dad always used to say to us, you know, be firm and stand firm in who you are. This is who I'm raising, this is who you are, believe that. And sometimes, you know, it's worked and other times it hasn't, but as I've got older, I can see, you know, my mum and dad's teachings were really, really valuable, and, you know, they have helped us in society. So yeah, it would go back to being very creative, having music, going out into nature, and then, you know, and another thing which is important as well is learning how to breathe, because we don't breathe properly. And if you can breathe properly, it will always ground you. You can always be firm, you can always be ready in terms of vocal, in terms of thinking, you know. So I think my classes would be quite unique in one way or another, but I'd want to know, and I'd want to spend time with each individual child to see what their talents are and to nurture that, as opposed to what the curriculum says they should be doing.
Okay.
That's in a utopia, I guess, I suppose.
No, not at all. Utopia can be created.
Brother KHONSU's in the house. Brother KHONSU.
Greetings.
Brother KHONSU, can you hear us?
Yes, greetings. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you nice and clear.
You could probably hear this. You could probably hear the streets of London too, because I'm still commuting.
But I'd like you to just give a quick introduction of who you are and what you're about.
Who am I? I am Andre Sankofa, also known as Professor KHONSU. I am a youth activist. I have my day job, I work with young people, and my purpose, I work with young people also. So that seems to be where my destiny lies. I'm also a co-founder of the Manhood Academy for Boys. I've written 2 books, one, Sacred Man from Boyhood to Manhood to Divine Masculine, which is like a manual for, well, not only for boys, not only for teenage boys, but for mothers of sons, for fathers, for men, for everyone, on principles of conscious manhood. How do you become a conscious man? You know, you take certain herbs, you have a certain mindset, you meditate, you know, there's certain things you do. So I've been doing it all my adult life. I thought I'd write a book about it. I've also done an offshoot book called Tupac, the metaphysical analysis of Tupac, the Black Panther,
Woo!
Which I really
Love
went
that.
in. It started as like an essay, and it turned into a book thicker than Sacred Man, and it's just exploring the untold story of Tupac. I mean, with all the hundreds of books that's been written on Tupac, no one's really gone into his Black Panther upbringing as a Panther cub. His mother and father were Black Panthers. His godfather, his godmother, his whole family were Black Panthers. So that
So
definitely
give us an insight. Give us an insight in the book.
An insight. You sure it's not all busy and dramatic out here? Because I'm still on the street.
Now we can hear you nice and clear.
Okay. Okay, so Tupac. Okay, let's go into Tupac if you want to go there. So Tupac, from my diligent study of about 5 years, the reason I was so interested in Tupac is because Tupac would have been my age if he was still here. And I was in the music industry.
More, please, KHONSU. Talking to the mic more.
Okay. Can you hear me now better?
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason I was so interested in Tupac was because Tupac would have been my age if he was still on this earth. And I was in the music industry at the same time as Tupac. Obviously, not to the scale of Tupac, but, you know, I was doing my music thing in a group, you know, traveling around the country performing. So, you know, it was a parallel world in terms of we were both submerged in the music of the time. So Tupac, the interesting story about Tupac, what people don't know is that he was well read to PhD level. So he was highly intelligent.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that the gangster and thug persona was a facade. His manager, his business manager, was a Black Panther elder. So he was surrounded by people who were giving him wise counsel. So he was actually, what he was trying to do, he was coming down to speak the language of the road youths in America. And he was recruiting the gangs of America to unite to become community soldiers. That's the true story of Tupac. And I go very deeply. It's a fact-based book. It's not theory. There's no who killed Tupac in my book. You don't even have that sentence in my book, you know. That's just for some other author. But I just go into his conscious upbringing and who he was destined to become before he was clipped short. So that's it in a nutshell.
What's the name of the book? What's the name of your book?
It's called The Metaphysical Enigma of Tupac Shakur.
Okay, Terry, could you send that round after?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, it's also, if you can see my image.
I'm a big fan of Tupac, yes.
Okay.
And because he was our contemporaries, because you was in was it the London Posse or London Rhyme Syndicate?
London Rhyme Syndicate, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about, yeah.
Okay. All right.
That was my era. Those years were really heavy of the hip hop culture. A lot going on there. Yeah.
Okay. In how do if say in the development of our children, yeah, how can that help in that development?
How what in what context? How can what help?
You know, like as we know of the times that we are going through, and as we know with the Manhood Academy, you put them through the rites of passage. In understanding, like even just using Tupac as what the knowledge of what you know, how would you apply that to teaching the youth?
Well, you teach the young people from the Sankofa concepts, which is go back to fetch it. Or in order to know your future, you have to know your past. So remember, the average trap MC or rapper do not know their past. They're coming from a present context. We're in the now generation. All that matters is now. So we may be raised in a context of knowing who we are, knowing our history, knowing our ancestors. But your mainstream young person, if they're not raised to a certain level in terms of their parents' capacity, they just know about now. If you ask them about Black history, they'll tell you, they'll start from Tupac. Instead of Yah Santawa or Imhotep or Kajo or Toussaint Louverture, I could go on, Nanny Maroon. They'll start from like Martin Luther King. You know, so we definitely have to instill in our young people the context of where they come from and the splendor that they actually come from in the context of history because without there's no history, there is no real future. You know, the future will just be based on what is being fed, and we know that's a narrative that the media feeds, mostly for financial gain, in terms of marketing a certain type of music that is just high drama, really, and in most instances is not even based on reality.
I'm getting a lot of people that ask me a lot of questions, and they want to know, how does Manhood Academy work? Because they know it's a rite of passage, but what are the consistencies of the development of what you do in Manhood Academy? Can you hear me? Don't tell me.
You just.
Huh?
No, he muted himself.
Okay. Is there any like, Rich? Is there anything you need to say at the moment before he comes on the mute?
Is his book on Amazon?
I think so.
I think he's.
But when he comes on, we will ask him. So, in your perspective, Richie, of what we've heard so far, what have you received?
Well, again, it's the overwhelming opinion that as parents, you got to take responsibility for your youth. It's as simple as that. You can't pass them off to anyone. Whether you find constructive programs in our community, like our brother KHONSU's talking about with the Manhood Academy. My son went to 100 black men.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I was listening to what I could. I'm in here running around with my son. But when we look at in the Americas, I'm not sure if it's the same, overseas, but when you look at like tragedies that happen to black people, and when we trust the courts and it goes into the system and we're done wrong, and the youth time and time again, they get a chance to see just how powerless we are as adults and how things are not getting done. How do you think how do you think that affects the development of our young people, with them believing in us, for us to be able to properly develop them in the first place?
That's a really strong question there, yeah.
Anyone on the panel would like to answer it?
It's a really difficult one to answer. It's a really good question, but really difficult to answer, because you're right. To a large extent, you don't have any control over what happens to them in the court system.
Right.
But again, I would say.
Wait, I'm sorry, because it's going in and out where I'm at. Just to add on to what I'm saying is, it's not just them in the court system, but just the injustices that's happening to when they look to us for guidance and protection and direction, and they see that we're marching, saying we should overcome, and things is not happening. What will make them want to practice our traditions or go or do things the way we're doing it when they're seeing us being powerless?
So give me an example when they see you being powerless.
Here in America, time after time again, the youth is seeing, institutional racism, racism on the jobs, police shooting us, all kinds of just drugs in the neighborhood. And, we're in this community, it's systems as black people that's working tirelessly to fix this thing. But you'll hear a lot of young people, there's a discord between the young people and the elders. F you, why should I listen to y'all? Y'all ain't got no buildings changed. Y'all not changing up. They don't believe in us. They don't believe in us developing them, because they look at us as people, and I'm not saying this is true, but they look at us as people that has failed them.
Can I just ask?
Sorry, go on, sis.
No, what I was going to say, so have the elders looked to the youngers to put forward what they believe should happen, what change they feel needs to come in, how they feel they can be the change, if they've lost faith in their elders because they feel that their elders are stuck in some sort of rut themselves, then it's for them to come forward and say, look, because you know what, the youth can see, they're not silly. So I think it's about us being able to give them a platform to be able to speak as well, because I think that's what our problem is sometimes, is that us as elders, we think too much that we have all the answers, when really maybe the youth have the answers, because they can see what's going on. That in some ways they're still a little bit more purified than we've been tainted by life. So you know, maybe it's for us to listen to them and then give them the guidance so that they can march forward. They are the next generation.
I'm with you definitely when you say that, but I mean, this is my viewpoint on that. We definitely need to listen to the young people because they are living an experience at this moment in time that's individual to them, innit? So from there, you definitely have to listen to what they have to say, but you have to be the guiding force. You can't second guess yourself, which I think society makes you do a lot as parents. Core values that you know you've lived with and you've seen go through your family and do nothing but positive are now being questioned based on these new age ways of parenting. And I think that's the part where you have to stay strong and stick to your value system while still being open to listening to the experience of your child. Because obviously, as I said, it is different. Whether the kids are moving faster, they're more violent, whatever the case may be, and your child finds themselves in, you definitely have to be a listening ear. You can't be a flip-flopper when it comes to your guidelines in front of your children. That's when you gotta be a captain of a ship, and you can't really be showing them that you're lost at sea. That's poor. You understand? You have to have a certain confidence in what, and again, you know, this is where you need support certain times. You're not, if you're especially, you know what I'm saying, you should not feel shame in going to, and that's why I like, you know, Manhood Academy, 100 Black Men. You take your child there, but the parent also simultaneously goes next door and has a session where they're also being built up and talked to, because again, it's twofold. You can't just be about the kids and then you, the parent, you know, your interaction or your build session where you get to sound a bit more less sure about yourself, but in a comfortable group setting where you can bounce is needed. It's vital, because again, nobody's an island and everybody don't know how best to approach something with their own child. But if you take these things and you stay strong to certain values, I think that definitely helps.
Let me ask you, Richie, because we talk about this all the time. When we talking about the self-development of our children, though, but what are we developing them in this Western culture to be a part of this Western culture, or are we developing them with some type of African mind or African way of thinking that's doing business with the Western culture? Because I asked that question because a lot of our children today, because we don't have any type of strong economic development for them or anything, and because of that, we don't have anything to properly protect them from this culture. Like I don't know, like I'm at a loss as to how to, even with my own children, like how do we properly, as Black people in the diaspora, properly developing our children?
Anyone can take that. I mean, for me, go on, sis.
Sorry, I was gonna say, like, I think our children, Black people, more than ever, especially in America, feel very, very displaced. And going back to whether you feel that they should, whether it's children, whether Western mentality should be instilled in our children, or whether it's our culture, I think that in today's world, I think that parents have got to strive to instill in our children exactly where we're from. I think we literally have to go back to the roots now. And I think that it should be, me personally, I feel that every parent should be taking their child. If you've got a black child, no matter where you come from, that child needs one visit to Africa, somewhere in Africa, because I think that when that happens, I think once they come back to the Western world, they will have gratitude for themselves and for each other. And they will have an understanding of exactly the sacrifices that our ancestors have gone through for them to be able to live the lives that they're living now. So I do believe that in today's society where it's just going crazy, we have to go straight back to the root.
And that's what I was saying. That's what I was saying earlier about identity is so important.
Yeah.
They need to know that from the home. But then, you know, I agree with what you say, sis. And I was fortunate that my dad made sure that we went back to Nigeria every year. And the first time I went, we were there for 3 months.
Yeah.
But not every family would be able to afford that.
No, not at all. So
yeah.
So now, and there's that saying where it takes a village to raise a child. So I think that for us, where they've taken away our youth centers and the communities and stuff like that, we need to pull together and start creating our own economy so that we can do this for our children that are in school. We need to literally set up our own banking systems, our own partners, our own things that can have so that our children have access to this, no matter what family you come from, whether your family is well off or whether they're not well off. We should be able to have enough funds. That black pound is strong, but we're just not utilizing it in the right way. We're really not. And I think once we can start investing in ourselves in that way by saying, you know what, I will give my brother, I will give my sister that £10 or that £100 that will get them. If we have like a black crowdfunding that helps our children to be able to do these things, then I think we will be on the right path. We can definitely do it. We're just not pooling enough together to do it. That's what it is.
But
so
let me quickly add to this, right? In concession, this is the reason why, as I wanted KHONSU to kind of say things about the rites of passage. We are creating some form of Manhood Academy as a parallel, because, you know, most people say they can't afford it, they can't do this and they can't do that. But if we are running that parallel with the school system, then we have something to give them the rites of passage, that when they finish that rites of passage, they're able to go to somewhere in Africa. Enhance why, as I said, like for me, that's why I'm trying to work with the forms of kingdoms, because it gives them the opportunity to be with that community, to be with that king, to able to understand that environment. Because if you notice, most children that come from Africa and come into Europe or come to America, the first thing that they do is that they go right through that education. The second part is they look for the best job that they can ever get, because they want to bring this thing back home. Now, our children in America or in Europe don't have that hunger because of how the system is based for them. And because we're not teaching them the other flip side of the coin, which is that culture, which is our people, in the form that if we have that Manhood Academy or Womanhood Academy, we're able to put information from America, we're able to put information from the Caribbean, the information from Africa, and put it in there to embed it into the child, that it's not just one area. Because most children just think, oh, I'm from one Pacific area, or like I'm from Harlem, or I'm from Brixton, or I'm from a small little area. That is nothing bigger than that. So that's my life.
Yeah.
So, you know, the brother in America, in the States, who asked that question, George, are you still there, George?
Yeah.
Is he still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, he's there.
Okay, hi. In answer to your question, because what we're doing over here, just a small group of us, is we're all just coming together voluntarily, like the Manhood Academy, you know, like 100 black men. 100 black men have been going for a while. I was doing voluntary work at a school on Saturdays, and it was a group of us that just came together to start to educate the inner city children. You know, so it's about getting the resources and getting like-minded people to come together, because I understand even over the Christmas period, Manhood Academy for the first time took a group of young people to the Gambia. I think it was the Gambia.
Yeah, it was the Gambia.
yeah, they took them to Africa, and that was for the first time, but that was done off their own backs. It wasn't from any government funding. You know, people are just, as you say, sis, we're putting the money back into the community. And that's literally what's happening, because there's a number of people in the UK right now. There's pockets of people who are doing these little things. It's just that we all need to come together to meet ourselves. And I think gradually we are. And even having platforms like this, you know, to share ideas, you know, this is where it starts. But sometimes I kind of feel it's really frustrating, because even with the work that I do, I'm thinking, what can be done? What can be done? And it's like, but I'm only one person reaching out to other people. But if you can get two or three of you together and just maybe have a session in your home to begin with, and then as people hear what's going on, maybe you could get a hall or something like that. And that's how it starts, you know. It starts out small, and then it can expand, because the other thing that I've noticed with working with young people is you've got young people who want the help, and there's others that don't. So it's everybody that you're going to be able to you know, affect, so to speak, or to encourage, because some people just aren't there yet, because everybody's journey is different. But from what I've been involved in over the last couple of years, and things like Manhood Academy, I would say it just has to start with us, and we've got to do it, really. And then there's young people who will find that, okay, I like how you do something. What is it about? And then they will come on board. One of my young people that really sticks out in my mind, and I was working with her about 5 years ago now. You know, there's some people you come across and you just click with. And I could tell here that she wanted to know more, but she didn't know more. And again, it goes back to identity. This young person had never heard of Roots. She'd never heard of Inyana Vanzant, Acts of Faith. She hadn't heard of any of that. So when I stopped working with her, I bought her a little present. I bought her the Acts of Faith. And then I told her to go to the library and look up Roots. And it was about a month later, she'd said to me that she had hired Roots and she'd watched the whole series. And that helped that young person to just move forward. So you can just touch one or two people. You don't know who you're touching. If you can just touch one, it will send ripples out. There, it's hard, but it will start from there. And that's the only way I can see this solution, because we can't keep looking outside of ourselves for something to happen. We've got to start with ourselves.
KHONSU.
He's gone, mate.
Yes, no, I am not. I'm here. I got my herbal tea, and I'm good.
And I want you to break down the manhood and the inside of manhood.
I checked in on some of what was saying, so I'll just download. I mean, the first thing I would say is be the change you wish to see in the world. I mean, that's the ethos of the brothers that I move with, you know. So in our community, we often say things like we need to do this and we need to do that and we just need to get together. And it's really about doing, you know, just making it happen. You know, how did we start? We started with a group of 8 men meeting in an Ethiopian restaurant in 2016. And we just said, you know what, instead of being passive viewers, just seeing our young people on the news in the Evening Standard every week, what we're going to do. Because we're all established in our own rights in doing the work we were doing individually, and we came together as a super team. And that's what it takes. It takes the individual becoming the collective, becoming a group, a team, and an organization, you know. So it's really an active word in terms of what do we do. You know, we have a lot of dialogues, a lot of community meetings about the problem, but tangible solution is a whole different ball game. And I'll give an example of that. I was at a community meeting in Brixton, NOI in Brixton. It was because of a spate of murders in London, and it was a solutions meeting, and there was a massive community that came. Loads of people came down. So I was on a panel with Origin Rites of Passage. There was Gang was there, Cheryl Phoenix, amongst a few other people. And the question was poised. I mean, there was a lot of complaints, and then, you know, I just the question was poised, what are we going to do, by someone in the audience. So my answer was, what are you going to do? What are you going to do tomorrow? What are you going to do next week? If you see a young person on the street looking unapproachable with their hood up, looking hostile, what are you going to do? Are you going to walk past them? Or are you going to check in on them? Are you going to acknowledge them? Ask them how they're doing, how they're feeling? You know, so it comes to the individual that becomes a collective, you know. So what are the individual skill sets we have that we can contribute to humanity or contribute to our community? You know, it really starts, you know, from that perspective of things, from my vantage point.
Okay, but yeah, KHONSU, I wanted because we've got people from the States on the panel, and I wanted you to kind of describe how that feeling was when we went to that convention called Ndaba.
Ndaba Rites of Passage, which was created by Origin Rites of Passage. Now, Manhood Academy is like a baby compared to Origin Rites of Passage, who are based in Lambeth North. They've been running for, I believe it's their 20th anniversary this year, and that's the stable that I came from. So, you know, I've been working with Origin Rites of Passage for over 10 years now, doing this work. And the start of Manhood Academy really was creating a meeting with Origin and saying, you've been doing this for a while, you're a success model, give us some advice and give us the blessing, because you are our elders. How do we do this? What should we do? That was stage 2 of, I told you, the meeting we had with the 8 brothers in a restaurant. Stage 2 was to approach Origin Rites of Passage as a success model. You know, so with that, it was created. But Rites of Passage is key. I'm digressing a bit, but let me just expand upon Rites of Passage. What is Rites of Passage? All right. Rites of Passage is an initiation from boyhood to manhood or girlhood to womanhood. Rites of Passage was a prerequisite in all cultures: ancient Asian culture, Chinese culture, African culture, and ancient European culture. All right. Why was it created? It was created for survival, to begin with. If we take the example of the African village, well, the elder men would say, okay, well, we're coming, you know, we've put work in now. Now it's time for you teens to take over. So we are going to take you away. All right. When you come of age, we'll take you away into the forest or the jungle, and we will be in seclusion for a while, and we will teach you the way of being a man in this village, how you will protect the women and the children, how you will maintain the village, how you will bring back food for the village, how you will hunt, amongst other things, how to be a man. Why was that done? It was done because we had strong communities back then. The Rites of Passage has been lost in modern times. Rites of Passage nowadays for your average teenager is maybe some form of independence, maybe leaving home for college, getting drunk, discovering women or girls discovering boys, having fun, maybe experimenting in all sorts of things which we won't go into. But that is a form of Rites of Passage coming into adulthood, discovering independence. But it's not guided by the wise elders. The Rites of Passage really is initiation into manhood and womanhood with the guidance of the wise elders. That is being lost in modern day society. But our young people are instinctively creating their own versions of Rites of Passage. We can call it the gang survival pack. Because what do you do when you're initiated into a so-called gang? You have to prove your camaraderie. It's a brotherhood or a sisterhood. You'd have to go through some kind of challenge to prove your worth. But what do you do in Rites of Passage initiation in ancient culture? You would have some level of camaraderie. You would have to prove your worth, your bravery. So what I'm trying to say is our young people are doing it instinctively, but without the guidance of the wise elders. So that's why we're bringing it back home on a small micro level, you know, in London. but it's just actually creating something which we thought was necessary based on our ancient principles and how we used to do things, just bringing it back.
Okay. But yeah, on the form of the Ndaba thing that we was talking about, in forms of international, what kind of things did you experience from the American counterparts and the Caribbean counterparts that came down?
Well, what we experienced in attending Ndaba, which was a Rites of Passage conference, it was held the previous year in Canada, and the host this year was London. What we experienced is that we're not alone, and there are people doing this in cells all around the world in terms of just supporting our teenage boys and teenage girls into adulthood in a positive way. And yeah, you could say 100 Black men kind of function in that capacity. West Side Young Leaders Academy, East Side Young Leaders Academy function in that capacity. But we function individually, unfortunately. So the ethos of Manhood Academy is cross-collaboration with all the organizations of like minds. And that's what Ndaba essentially was about.
Okay. And in that format of applying it, as we were saying in the Manhood Academy West, in that we know that explanation of the Sesame Street kind of thing. Just give us a little breakdown on that.
Well, Manhood Academy's flagship branch is in North London under the in the Hackney region. And we've expanded in December to Manhood Academy West, which is in the Ladbroke Grove kind of Grenfell area, across the road from where the Grenfell tragedy happened. So we're kind of supporting the community in that region and bringing the same model there, In Sesame Street, that's just an analogy I use.
Yeah.
What we do at Manhood Academy is, like everyone watched Sesame Street here, right? When you was little tiny. Everyone loves Sesame Street, right?
Big Bird.
You've heard. Sesame Street's the coolest thing.
Big Bird.
Big Bird, yeah, Big Bird. Exactly. So, in Sesame Street, right, you just have like Obama show up, talking to the little puppets, and then you'd have like, I don't know, who else did you have? I don't know, Colin Powell. You'll have Wesley Snipes. You'll have Oprah Winfrey. They just kind of show up on Sesame Street, and they speak to the children, and then they leave. So at Manhood Academy, we have a lot of people that just come through. They pass through like Sesame Street, we've just started West London. We've had Dr. Layla Africa in from America. We've had a trainload of special guests that just come in and enrich our young people and just show them that there are elders that are doing great works, and maybe one day you'll be an elder like this, So we're modeling behavior. We're modeling successful behavior. So that's just something we do as an ethos at Manhood Academy. And anyone on the panel here who's in the region of the West London area and has the capacity on a Saturday, please come down and give some wisdom to our young people.
Mm-hmm. So in the forms of the rites of passage, you said you do these elements and cycles. Just give us a little quick brief of what they're about.
Well, we have 4 cycles, just like in high school. You'd have maths, English, science, geography, etc. Ours are based on the natural elements of earth, air, fire, and water. So we begin with the earth cycle, which really is the capacity of grounding, getting familiar with the boundaries and rules, for a loose word, and how we'll get to know each other. So grounding. So we use analogies. We might plant. We might use the analogy of or the little tiny ones are all seeds, and we are the water to grow them. So that's the earth cycle. The fire cycle comes next, which is quite an intense one, and that's to do with passion and anger. When I say passion, I mean, what are you passionate about in life? What do you want to become? What are your ambitions, goals? Who do you want to be? Let's explore that. And the fire side is anger. How do you maintain your anger? How do you regulate your anger? Anger is not one-dimensional in terms of violence. You know, you can express anger very articulately and get your point across without having to resort to the one-dimensional aspect of just an outburst, uncontrolled. So, you know, in a form of maybe a loosely term it anger management. But they also do one thing, and they go to the core. Even the little tiny 12-year-olds, they go to the core of their feelings. So we'll have each of them write a letter to their father. A lot of the challenges, sadness as a child, anger as a man. So we tap into that sadness a lot of our boys have, which is father hunger, or absent fathers, unfortunately, which is chronic in our community. But not all of our young people. Some of them are in healthy households, you know, mom and dad married, middle class, etc. So it's not all from a victim mentality. And those children will write a letter acknowledging their father, or maybe just expressing them some things about their father that they want to express and haven't been able to. So that's quite a key element in our curriculum in terms of going back to the core of, for some trauma, where's dad? So we heal that from a very young age in order for the man to appear when they grow into themselves. The next cycle is the water cycle, which is to do with spirituality, meditation, mindfulness, how to be still, stillness, because this is the information age, the fast food era where we're always rushing around, parents and children, football clubs, school runs, you know, game consoles, mobile phones, we're always moving. So we just slow them down and teach them the basics of meditation. And the air cycle is to do with entrepreneurship. So we teach them from a very young age how they can generate money. And we teach them, you may well be studying in school to be an employee, but we would like to explore entrepreneurship. So that's the 4 basic elements that we explore at Manhood Academy.
Okay. Is there anyone on the panel that would like to ask any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's really good what you're doing at Manhood Academy. Excellent, excellent, and I salute you for it. But what about, would you be able to reach out to older boys in terms of from 16 upwards? Because I like the fact that you're capturing these young boys when they're still quite young, but what about an older age group? I mean, they'll probably be difficult to maybe you have manhood. Anyone there?
Yeah. KHONSU.
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Well, as I said, our flagship in North London, I mean, we had a young program for 8 to 12-year-olds, and we had a teenage program from 13 to 9-year-olds. So it was the teenagers who went to Gambia in December. So we do have that in our North London branch. In our West London branch, we're starting off with the younger ones. Then we'll be expanding to the teens. So it's just a holistic cycle.
Okay. So what would your oldest age group be?
The oldest, I'm 19 years old. Older than 19, they would come in a voluntary capacity. So they'll be the young ones in the team.
Yeah.
So they'll be the mediator between us, who are the elders, and the young ones.
Okay, good.
And they'll be giving them a level of wisdom that we may not necessarily give them because they're closer to their age group.
Okay. B2, is there any questions you would like to ask?
Not for the minute, brother.
Okay. E, is there any questions you would like to ask? E.
I would like to hear from the panel and ask some people some questions about the works that they're doing. And I'm sure there's some amazing things going on that I've missed. So I haven't even said hi to no one, nothing. I just came, I just went in. So how is everybody anyway?
Hey, good evening.
Good evening, and just,
Let's
yeah.
Good evening.
Greetings.
Melanie,
Yeah.
Melanie, there was a question you wanted to ask about Manhood Academy. Do you remember it?
No.
It was something about how it works, because you were looking in the insight of doing something similar.
Yes. But I don't remember the question. That one day that we were talking, I was kind of drilling you and asking you all these questions, and you did a really good job at kind of explaining it to me. So I just wanted to say that I admire the work that you all are doing over there. Do know that there are some people of like mind over here in the U.S. and with the same passion and desire to help our youth. Myself and another sister are wanting to have a program for the young women called Daughters of the Diaspora, and definitely kind of along the same lines of having a place where young women can address issues, such as, self-esteem and body image issues, especially when they are bombarded with a Eurocentric standard of beauty, and helping our young sisters to kind of embrace their unique beauty, and from their hair to their skin tone and everything. Just learning how to cope with, just a lot of the similar issues, the absent parent, some of the issues even within their environment, the crime and so forth. So I was kind of speaking to Brother Terry about some of the logistics, as far as if the program, because we don't have a facility, so if the program was in the school or outside the school, how it was funded, how did you get parent buy-in, those type of things, because even if a youth is interested, sometimes the parent's mind isn't on anything pertaining to the continent or being pro-black or being African-centered. And, unfortunately, in the U.S., saying things like African-centered can be a deterrent, because a lot of black people don't see themselves as African.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like, so that's just, it's not even really a question, but just like a comment, or just giving information on some obstacles, or just some thoughts that I was having pertaining to implementing something similar to the Manhood Academy. But again, salute to you brothers. The work that you're doing is awesome. Awesome.
Did you hear that, KHONSU?
Yes, greetings, sister. Yes.
And she's based in Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is we're on radar, because we're definitely looking to do some work in the U.S. And it may not be a full-blown program. It could be like a summer camp or something of that nature, where we come over for a time, for a few weeks, and deliver what we do. But yeah, I mean, as I said, we're about cross collaboration. So, I mean, it's definitely a conversation we can build upon if you're up for that. And just an insight into the model of Manhood Academy. In terms of location and building, we, as far as we're concerned, we offer a service to the community. So one of the prerequisites is give us a building and we'll deliver our service,
Mm-hmm. Richie.
Yeah.
Well, is there any questions you would like to ask KHONSU or dialogue with KHONSU?
I mean, KHONSU's covered most of the bases. What I want to talk about is when we first started the conversation, we were talking about different scenarios or problems that we face, or that the kids are going through in schools. So one of the things I'll ask you, KHONSU, is what are the most common problems that you find when dealing with young people? Like what are the first issues that you seem to always come across when dealing with the children, and things that you hear from the parents?
The most common thing is probably lack of understanding of our culture, or our young people fighting to be themselves in an environment that just puts everyone in the same box. You know, for example, culturally, where I mean, if you go to Africa or the Caribbean, certainly where my family's from, you know, we're just expressive and we're loud. You'd see your boy way down the road and you would hail him, you know, yo, you know, that's just how we are. You'd wave your hands around and you know, yo, you know, you'd be hyper animated at seeing your friend, or that's just how we are as a people generally. And other cultures don't understand that. Some other cultures are maybe quite reserved. So when our boys are being their natural self, for example, in schools,
yeah,
it may come across to other cultures as aggressive. So we have to teach our boys the social language of their environment, and having to be, in a sense, bilingual in how they do things. You know, how you function in a corporate environment or an educational environment may be different to how you function when you see your boys in a barber shop, or you're all getting ready to go out to a club. So we just teach them about social language and social etiquette, and basically how to survive the environments that they're in. From the parents, a lot of parents, let's say a lot of mothers are very, have a high anxiety about the survival of their sons, if we're
yeah,
talking about boys, and feeling unprotected, which is another social issue we have in our community, and our boys being vulnerable, even though they may posture hyper masculinity. They may not always be emotionally mature to deal with certain situations. So, as I said, anger is not one dimensional. Anger is not just a reaction to a situation and posturing violence. You know, you can navigate situations based on your emotional intelligence. So we just teach survival skills, really, unfortunately, in the environment we're in. And we give families, I say, anxious mothers, tools in how to protect their sons. One of the tools that is always recommended is, if father is not around, then you create a whole community. It takes a nation, it takes a village to raise a child. So we always advocate, you know, have your son have a relationship with his uncle, your brother, granddad, that good neighbor, a friend, your boyfriend, your partner. Have him submerged in masculinity all around him, which will compensate for the father hunger he may be craving. So that's just one aspect. I mean, we could speak about girls. Obviously, boys is my specialist field, but they have their own social issues to contend with, as was mentioned earlier, in terms of self-identity and being really forced a narrative of what beauty is, and wanting to be something other than what they are a lot of the times. That kind of Nicki Minaj, you know, kind of black Barbie doll persona that's not so fashionable nowadays, but it was a year or two ago. I mean, it's beautiful that a lot of young sisters are embracing the natural side of themselves in terms of their hair and how they look. But yeah, we have chronic numbers of identity crisis in our community.
Terry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting what you were saying, KHONSU, because going back to when you were asking what are some of the issues that I come across, and one of the issues that we do come across quite a lot is that Black children are their behavior is always perceived as aggressive. And so there are times when a young person is excluded for expressing themselves or doing exactly the same thing that their counterpart may do, but the black child is the one that gets permanently excluded, while their counterpart who is doing possibly the same thing or a similar thing, they only get a fixed term exclusion or they're not excluded at all. So that is an issue that I come across a lot as well, you know, because of the way that they express themselves. I've gone into schools and I couldn't believe one teacher was saying to me, he was really aggressive, and he was tall. And I had to say to her, you're in a boys' school, they're growing, and she was 5 foot something. I said, everybody's going to be tall and look possibly intimidating to you. But the perception is always that, you know, black kids are very aggressive. So that's something that, you know, we come across a lot. It's not fair, you know. So it's good that you would be teaching them that.
Yeah, right and exact. And I mean, I'm gonna play the angel's advocate, as I say, but I would say it goes two ways, you see, because we're aware of that. And really, it's our responsibility to teach our young people the social skills they need in order to know how to conduct themselves in different environments. But keep in mind also that our young people are being forced fed a narrative about how they should be and who they should be. It's coming through the music. It's coming through Grand Theft Auto. It's coming through trap music and drill music. And it's a full sense of masculinity that our young boys are. That's their textbook to life in a lot of aspects if they're not guided correctly. So that's the default, you know. I work in a social, emotional, and mental health high school, and these young boys are just like you might say the Lord's Prayer if you're a Christian. These guys will be saying the mantras of the lyrics of the music they're listening to just over and over again on repeat. So then they're internalizing the lyrics, and the lyrics are not, they're definitely not elegant. You know, they're talking about extreme violence and disrespect to women, etc., etc. But that becomes their narrative, you know. So we just have to guide their minds and say that, you know, you're being given this stereotype. It's not one that you have to buy into. You have alternates. If your thing is money, well, let's teach you how to be an entrepreneur so you could do a legal hustle. You know, so we just have to guide our children, and we can't rely on the education system to do that. That's why we have extracurricular activities for our young people, so that they can submerge themselves in education, but also they have alternates in how to navigate their environment out of school.
Do you do music history with them then?
Music history?
Yeah, in terms of, because I'm thinking in terms of having a music session with them in terms of the history of hip hop, because when we were growing up, the hip hop culture was very, very strong. And it was something that, you know, it had its principles. Is that being taught to them? Because I've spoken to a lot of young people when they're listening to certain tunes, and I'm saying, well, do you actually know where that originates from? And then those that want to listen, I can break it down to them. So, and they're really surprised by that, you know, and that in itself can have an effect on them. So maybe doing a music class with them on the history of the music that they're actually listening to and the origins of it and where it came from, because a lot are totally unaware of what real hip hop is as opposed to what they're listening to today. I mean, there's always been lyrics, you know, to do with violence and sex and what have you, but if they had that basis again, you know, maybe they could think differently about it. Because I know some of the young people I've spoken to who are willing to listen, they've thought twice about some of the music that they're going to be listening to going forward.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, I teach the metaphysics of hip hop. I lecture on that, and I do one lecture I did at the University of Arts London some years ago is I took the young people in attendance on a journey through British hip hop. Yeah. So I did case studies. I did a case study on like Cookie Crew, Gate Crash, Cash Crew, Overlord X, MC Duke, all the originating pioneers, London Rhyme Syndicate, of course, but all the pioneers of UK hip hop.
Yeah.
So I did case studies where, okay, cool curious from Battersea, just basically playing snippets of their videos, and analyzing their lyrics. Hijack as well from South London. So just giving them a sense of the music that they love, where it originated from, So, that's the kind of stuff that I do when I lecture. We haven't brought that to the Manhood Academy as yet. I mean, that's a great, now you've prompted it, that's something definitely I'll look at exploring in the future. But yeah, it's important because music is what really drives our young people and us as well. Music is just something that really you do not. I mean, music penetrates the subconscious mind without permission.
Yeah.
If you want to look at it like that,
Yeah.
a song will bring you back, way back to that time when you was having a great time or was in a relationship or the good times. It could bring you to bad times. It can, music has a profound influence on our being. So yeah, I would agree with you that it's very important to educate our young people on the music that they love, which is rap, hip hop, trap, drill.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Rich,
I'm going to be doing a session of shows. I'm going to be doing a session of shows on the weaponization of music.
Right,
we're going to kind of
exactly.
explore positives and negatives just of what we've been talking about, because again, modern day music today is on some different kind of frequency, and as you say, it's a form of mind control, the way they're programming the kids. And again, if they're listening to it religiously, it is going to sink into their psyche, acting on cues that they're not aware of. Same thing with the games, the programs. So yeah, it's definitely something that's important. So I agree with you on looking at the history. Again,
it's a programming, isn't it? Because,
it's social programming.
Yeah, and because music is the biggest medium, and music will come into your head even when you don't want it to. So it's no surprise that they will be, driven by whatever it is they're hearing.
I mean, look, there's so many bad habits with our young people today that come from the social engineering of television, games, music. This is why, again, certain times you need to get them out of the house and doing some other activities other than just watching telly. I mean, you can't stress enough. It's a lot harder here in England because obviously the weather's rubbish most of the time. We're not encouraged in that way. Yeah, but it's definitely a part of what we need to urge our kids to do, because at some point they need to be unplugging from this digital world, because it becomes too symbiotic where next minute they're never detached. And again, the science behind the lights in the phones and that, it offsets your body. So you're eating, you're sleeping, your concentration all goes if you're looking at that screen for too long, because it's simulating daytime, different moods, chemicals are being released in the brain. Like, there's a real higher science to the way their kids and us in general. And again, for me, and understanding the greatness of being Black, I understand that these effects in this Western society have an even more detrimental effect on us and our children and our future generations. So if we don't manage it, we're never going to pass on the best versions of ourselves. And that's what it's about. That's what Black coupling is about. That's what Black families is about. It's about passing on the best possible version of yourself. And you need to look at how that's done. Obviously, it starts with a Black woman and a Black man meeting, but there has to be levels to that coming together. There has to be a governance over how you are in your life and so on. It knocks on to the kids and generational. That's the only way we're going to come out of these situations that we find ourselves in, if we start to plan from our home outward.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. KHONSU.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, in perspective of what he was talking about and the family and all that stuff, I just want to show people, because we talked about the Womanhood Academy and we talked about the Manhood Academy, but we haven't really gone into the Parenthood Academy.
Yeah. Well, the Parenthood Academy. I mean, what we do in Manhood Academy is the parents. You know, like a youth club, you might after school drop your child off, give them a packet of crisps and a drink, and say, "Okay, I'll see you in 2 hours." So it doesn't really work like that at Manhood Academy, because the parents stay, and they have their own dialogue on progressive parenting millennials, which is a whole different ball game to maybe the parenting of our generation on this call. The millennials are a whole different ball game. It's not their fault. We're in the now. It's the now generation. It's the fast food generation. Everything now. Lack of patience. I want it now. You know. So how do you deal with that? So we just work on strategies in how to raise our young people, based on where they're at and where society's at. You know, we reference people like Yolanda Van Sant, Les Brown, Deepak Chopra, spiritual parenting. So yeah, the parents stay. The parents stay and have their own dialogue on progressive parenting, and we're not standing at the front and saying this is what you do as a parent. It doesn't work like that. It's a conversation where they share ideas amongst themselves, and we're just guiding the forum.
Mm-hmm. Because you know we're at that year, as I always call it, the year of the African, meaning Trinity, and understanding the family, and for the for the adults to able to understand their own children, in the fact that, you know, we can do as much as we can by putting them in different schools and different rites of passages, but they always go back home. And if the parents don't know what they're doing outside of their vicinity, then how would they able to engage with that child when they're even playing up at home? So in what Richard was saying is about that parent, that we need to become in that family and showing others how families work. Because the truth of it all is that unity is paramount, that we need to have unity so that we can understand each other instead of segregation and division. The more division we have, the more we start to neglect our children. So
let me say this as well. Yeah, that again, within this process, there has to be a level of honesty. That's the thing. None of these things can work unless there's a level of honesty when you're self-analyzing. So we all come from different social backgrounds, issues, problems, good situations. But when we're dealing with our children, again, none of us are standalone projects. We're all coming from someone else and another situation. And one of the most powerful things that I experienced, I mean, when I went to 100%, one of the first questions a facilitator asked, which started the ball rolling, was to the parents, was what was the mind state that you was in when you conceived your child? What was happening at that time? And again, you know, since forgotten that time, we've moved on. It maybe wasn't good. It maybe was good. But just to take a moment into that moment of what you was doing, what your situation was like in that relationship, speaks to a lot of things when you start to look at your child, because these things impact their development. That's why, again, in African culture, we talk in a love situation, because that's the ideal situation, because it starts off a foundation of thought and empathy and energy. that geared towards the right thing, because again, we don't understand the impact of meeting somebody, having a one night stand, meeting somebody, not really ever liking them, but now you've conceived and you're desperately in love with that. And there's scenarios and it sets up different things, let alone the social issues in our relationships, whether or not we stay together, single, poor, domestic violence, drugs, all of these factors. But again, when we're coming to the table to heal, Andrew, us as parents have to self-analyze on an honest level answers, because if we don't do that, you're off the mark. You will always be plugging holes that don't necessarily need to be addressed. So again, my thing is that as parents, we got to be what's happened. If we've gone for a situation where, again, as a single parent, you've overcompensated, so you sport your child, you give in too much, there's less guidance about that. Yeah, if you're a two-parent family, but now one of the parents has become lax, as a lot of men do certain times, where I find a lot of men don't have they are with a woman and it's a family situation, they do things together, but then in time of the man being left alone with the children, constantly doing things. You gotta be honest about these situations. When it comes maybe an issue with your son, why he's not communicating with you in the same way, because maybe he interacts with you while his mother's there. You gotta look out, we gotta have to be honest about it. Anyone can speak, anyone can pick up the chain.
George.
Yo,
yeah, I was asking you a question. In what you do with your child, in forms of development, in that you're doing like the self-defense, how has that helped you with your child?
Wait a minute, say that one more time. I'm sorry, say that one more time.
I said, in the perspective of like where you're just coming from, in forms of self-defense, of teaching your children self-defense, how has that helped the development of your child?
Well, it helps them. It helps them mentally. It helps them to start to believe in himself mentally, believe that he can achieve and accomplish things, because it gives them certain things to strive to, and it translates into his everyday life and things that he does in general. Just learning how to do a crescent kick or a full tornado kick, or having to compete against other children and getting his behind whooped, taking that home, and coming back and practicing. I think it just translates into everything else, into schoolwork, learning to deal with others in society. So I just think that learning, especially for boys, learning certain types of defense teaches you how to deal with the society and how to deal with hardships and deal with triumphs. In my opinion, just when you're dealing with certain forms of martial arts or sports in general, just learn. It teaches you how to win and fail at the same time, how to learn balance.
Is there anyone in the panel that wants to give a contribution before we come to a close?
I had something to say. I was kind of in an area where I didn't have good service, so I didn't want to start speaking and it was breaking up. But earlier, I believe it was Brother KHONSU. He was speaking about, he said he was playing like Angel's Advocate and basically saying that, it goes both sides as far as the aggressive type of demeanor or the aggression that's perceived by people, by others pertaining to our youth. And I just wanted to speak on I definitely see both sides of that coin myself. I work in a school, and where I can see that not even I wish I could say that it was non-blacks who interpreted the behavior of black students to be aggressive, but it's just in general. It's both blacks and non-blacks that pretty much have a prejudice or like a bias that whatever a student says or how they said it, or if they didn't speak when they were supposed to speak, it's almost as if their behavior is interpreted as if they have an attitude, they are aggressive, and so forth. And they are definitely more inclined to receive some sort of discipline action, whether it's being put out of class, whether they don't receive their points for the day, whether it's a phone call home, you know, and so forth. But on the other side, I will say that I think that all that is going on in society definitely has an impact on our youth. And to a certain degree, our youth carry with them a certain level of anger, a certain level of resentment, a certain level of attitude. I don't know. Plenty of times I am asked to intervene with the student, and the student literally is like, I'm gonna give a perfect example. I had to do a mediation between a teacher and a student because the student said, "Can you please get out my face?" to the teacher. "Can you please get out my face?" And the teacher felt that that was rude, and you know, he was like, all I was trying to do was help, and all I was this, and he's just going to tell me to get out of his face. And I said, well, he's 14, right? So although he said it in a rude manner, somewhat, right? He said, "Can you get out of my face?" He said, "Can you please get out of my face?" He said, please. He doesn't have the communication skills to say, "You are a little bit too close. You're making me feel uncomfortable. Why are you so close to me? Do you mind moving back a little bit?" Okay, I understand there are other skills that he could learn, right, and demonstrate. However, this is where the student is. You're supposed to meet your students where they are and then grow from there and teach them those things. Why jump to he's being aggressive? He's threatening gestures, and you know, like some of the language that you use, you can tell that it is in order to create some sort of paper trail, in order to gather evidence for a particular type of diagnosis and so forth. And so I completely agree with Brother KHONSU that it is definitely two sides to the story, because to that young student, that was as polite as it can get. I said, "Can you please get out of my face?" And I'm like, you just walk around telling people, "Get out of my face"? You think that's nice? Like, it's kind of abrasive. You know what I'm saying? Like, but no insight. So literally, we have young people being abrasive, just walking around being abrasive and somewhat rude as their norm. So it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of both sides to the coin.
Was the teacher white?
Yes, he was.
Well, then that's 70% of the issue. We got a lot of teachers in our community. Go ahead.
We do. But unfortunately, I can't say that's because the teacher's white, because it pains me when I see, like, and I'm not going to just put a blanket and say every school all over the U.S., this is how it is. However, I do feel that black personnel in the school have a tendency to be very, very hard on black students, right? And they treat them, or they can treat them, as if they are correction officers in a jail, like
yes,
expecting them to be bad, you know, literally in kindergarten and first grade, calling the kids bad. Oh, Dante, he just bad. He being his normal bad self. Like
that's part of our culture. We talk like that in our homes. So
right,
that's part.
and that's what I'm saying is that's wrong, right?
Right, but what I'm alluding to, because I worked in the schools for a while too, and in the inner city, especially here in Philadelphia, the majority of our kids are being taught by white women that comes from the county that don't understand our culture. So when little Raheem is talking a little way or saying certain things, she interprets that as being aggressive because she doesn't understand the culture. So it's a little different. With us, we understand that we understand the culture, but we're conditioned as a people to treat each other messed up, unfortunately. We treat each other. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
About to say something.
So I was going to say that basically because we treat each other very abrasive and we're strict with each other, and you have people outside the community also nitpicking on things. What I'm saying is that it's both hands, because it's not like the black staff are understanding of the differences. They're not understanding either. So these kids are just literally not getting a break.
No, I think, but see, I disagree. I think that the black staff is understanding. The black staff, as black people, the way we treat each other, it translates into everyday life. We understand. We just treat each other messed up, unfortunately. It's the white people that don't understand our culture.
How is that getting a break? How when I said we can't get a break, if Raheem, right? If Raheem gets upset and goes, oh man, and the teacher, a white teacher says, oh, you know, he lacks self-control. He's impulsive. She starts using this language, right? And calls home and is making a fuss. Okay, Raheem is in trouble. And if Raheem's teacher, Miss Tamika Johnson, you know, Raheem goes, oh man, and she says, you know what, get up out of my class, because he's still not getting a break. Either way, Raheem is in trouble.
But I disagree with that too, because I don't think that happens as much as people say. We got a lot of black teachers, the very few that are looking out for children, that's taking children home, that's going over and above because of the conversations we're talking about. We got advocates in schools. I disagree with that. There's a lot of black. There's a lot of black. The problem that you have is in these schools, there's not enough parent participation that's helping out with the teachers. And when these children are being unruly, a lot of the black teachers sometimes get pushed to their wits' end because it's like no parent participation with a lot of these children within the schools. That's where a lot of the problems coming from with the black teachers. I see it in the Philadelphia school district all the time.
So with the lack of parent participation, you might have frustrated teachers, but that doesn't mean that these frustrated teachers are still being very I'm not saying that all teachers, but I will say that, like, you know, maybe in Philadelphia, you know, but in other areas, especially in the early areas, in the early years, right? A lot of kids do have black teachers. You know, I'm from Brooklyn, New York. New York, and I never had a white teacher until I went to high school.
All our teachers is white. Majority.
I'm just telling you. First grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth. All my teachers black. The whole school black. The kids black. Principal black. The lady in the front office black. When I got to high school, I'm like, oh, white people. See what I'm saying? Yeah. I work in a different school district now, and on the low socioeconomic side of town, yes, there are white teachers there, but the majority of the staff in those areas are black people. When I walk past a kindergarten, first and second grade class, teachers are completely yelling at little kids, sit like you don't expect a 5-year-old to be moving their body. I've done lunch duty, kindergarten through 2nd grade, and the teachers say they got silent lunch. They got to sit there and eat and quiet because they wasn't behaving in class. A 1st grade, like, so the one period of the day that they supposed to be able to turn up and wild out, they have to sit down quietly and eat. And they appoint one student to sit there and watch, and they better tell when the teacher comes, they have to report who was talking when they're supposed to be on. So I'm literally telling you, this is 6-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. I guess it all depends on. I guess it all depends on where you at and where and
so what I'm saying is that, you know, these are Black teachers, and I'm not even, and let's not even talk about support staff. They say stuff like, you know, y'all know how to handle these boys. They don't have a father in their life, so, you know, these support staff using profanity towards people's children, putting their hands on people's children, you know, like supposedly giving them tough love, saying all kind of, because I'm bringing this up because this is some of the toxic stuff that's in our community that we think we are helping our kids, right? So we can blame the you know, the other community that is teaching our kids. I don't agree with that. But I think that the same, you know, like when earlier when they were talking about like the Montessori and the differences between homeschool, it's literally a shift in understanding child development, right? So we can't come off of the plantation and then bring the plantation to the classroom. That's what I'm saying. We can't have, you know, this, I'm gonna whip these kids into shape because it's not effective. We still have 8th graders reading on 3rd grade levels, so apparently putting them on silent lunch is not effective. Apparently, you know, doing all of this punitive stuff that we do, it's not effective.
That's coming from the parents. Most of these parents, most of these parents in these inner cities and certain places they come from, if you look at the children, then you see the parents. But you know how many times when you got kids acting out of control and you have teachers that call up and the parents come up and they just as crazy as the goddamn child? Like we in a whole different generation, man, of adults.
But you have so Brother George Macon, what I would say is deal with when you're dealing with the child, pretend the teacher should pretend that they're dealing with the family. Do you know how many times I've given the parent a questionnaire and they say like, oh, I forgot my glasses. Some of these parents is illiterate.
My point is
some of these parents can't read, but the teacher would say, well, I sent this home, or you know, why you not helping him with his homework? Well, maybe the parent is illiterate. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they need some support.
Okay. The same issues that you're talking about, it happens here in the UK as well. But I think one of the main things is what do you think the solution would be? I mean, it's a big problem, and we know and we're aware of what the problems is because the same thing that's happening over there is happening over here as well. But how do you think, coming away from this forum, what is one thing that we could all try and do to try and get some kind of a solution?
Start setting.
Well, I could tell you, we do have like ongoing professional development that we have for our teachers. So in the school district, we have social workers that are within the, like, housed in the schools, and we have the social workers implement a trauma-focused professional development to the teachers to educate them on the impacts of trauma, the impacts of not just you saw somebody get killed kind of trauma, but chronic ongoing trauma such as community violence, domestic violence in the home, parent incarceration, being placed into foster care, and to kind of inform teachers of the multitude of trauma that children potentially could be impacted with and how that impacts their learning. So to give teachers a level of empathy, right? And then we go over de-escalation techniques, communication techniques, ways of soliciting information from a student, but it takes a teacher to hear this information and not perceive it as blaming. Like, you are the reason why your class is out of control. I do. Some teachers I get better results from than others. Some teachers are more open. They're like, look, I really want to connect with the young man. Like, help me. And those teachers, they get it. They practice the skill. They come back and say, oh, that worked, or I did that and he ripped it up. Like, yeah, he's not with it. But some teachers say, I've been teaching for 20-something years. Little girl, you ain't coming in here and telling them, like, I'm not trying that.
Right. Well, I'll say this, man. Especially when you're dealing with like the inner cities, like Philadelphia, where I'm from, Baltimore, and stuff like that. Man, dealing with the public school system is not going to change because it's not set up for us to flourish in it. It never was. They got systems set in place, especially here in Pennsylvania, when you got a child that's a little unruly or can't sit still. They want to put them in learning disability classes because the state get more money for it. So if little Hakeem is a little talkative, or he has emotional outbursts at times, oh, this kid he has a learning disability, get him out of here. Like it's different things that set up. I took my son out of the public school and I homeschooled my son now. Now I'm in think tanks with people around the city where we're starting to get together groups of kids where we start homeschooling them together, because my son responds different with me than he would in a classroom setting, especially in these inner cities, in these inner city schools. They're not working. They've been failing us for generations. They underfund us. There's so many budget cuts, and the first thing they do is they do it in the schools. They're shutting schools down. They even merging schools together. Like it's a mess because we don't financially fund a lot of things, and we're ignorant to a lot of stuff. So, yeah. And we don't have home ownership in these inner cities where our tax dollars go to our schools. So and that's why they're gentrifying us out and pushing and shutting schools down, because we don't have a say-so. We never did because we don't own the communities.
So, yeah, in that perspective, George, as I was going to say, in that perspective, understanding us our kinds of solutions, and, in this forum is how we push forward. And understanding our differences and looking at things of ways of how to improve, because a lot of people don't even realize, but England, as in the UK and in America, we're both a mirror reflection. So we can able to take in the good things on your side and taking the good things from our side and finding a common denominator of collaborating in it in the form of our African diaspora. So if we're doing homeschooling or we're even putting children in the school system, what is it that we can actually do to push forward? And this is what we was talking about, the rites of passage, in forms of giving our youth something, even though we may not have the time or anything, but we can able to put our children somewhere where we can actually give them the information or development that they need. So in that perspective, KHONSU, you there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, in your kind of forms of what you perceive in solutions, what would you give to the public before we log out here?
Well, I'd reference my son, my 9-year-old. So, any of you, if you saw my 9-year-old and you said to him, who's your first teacher? He would say, Dad and Mum. You'd ask him, who's your secondary teacher, your second teacher? School. All right? So we have to keep in mind, it's because as a culture, we are so suppressed. We spoke about our young people in schools sitting in silence. That is a Victorian model. Sit down, don't talk, be quiet, write, don't speak. That model is dead, all right? You say that to our young people nowadays, they're gonna suppress themselves to the point where they will wild out. It might be violent, it might be behavioral issues, etc., etc. We know in a natural environment, children run out in fields, climb trees, play, etc. So there is a level of suppression. It's not our culture to behave like that. So the solution for me is my son goes to a mainstream school, but that's not his primary education. That's his academic education. All right. Out of school is his social, emotional education. All right. So we submerge our son in different environments that enriches him and enriches his life. And he knows school is for academic. That's just the basic tools he will need to navigate the Western environment that he's raised in. So we cannot rely on the schools to educate our children. They can academically educate your children unless we're fortunate enough to homeschool, like the good brother. Now we know that takes a system and that takes organizing, that takes forward planning, you know, but those are submerged in educational system. I would not advocate relying on that to enrich your child. I would say send them to martial arts, send them to youth organizations like Manhood Academy, make them go out in the countryside in the school holidays, make them travel the world. You know, these things really created a well-rounded young person. And even if there is no budget to do these things, there are enriching museums where you can teach them about our history. There are places you can go for free. I'm sure like in the US, you can get real creative in how you educate your children with no budget. All right. Over here, you can go to British Museum. You know, you can go to a tray load of places. In the summer holidays, there's events you can go to where you can just enrich your child. So I would not leave solely the school system to educate our children, because a lot of the times I have to uneducate my son, say my youngest son, on what he's learning in school, not in terms of the curriculum, but the things he's learning in the playground, the conversations he's having. And then he's asking me curiously, because instinctively he knows these things are wrong. You know, he'll ask me, so what do you think about that? And then I'll have to reprogram him, you know, because we have no control over what he learns in the playground with other children that may be dysfunctional. So it's a counteraction in terms of education. Plus, I don't homeschool, but I do homeschool. Meaning, for example, if a good example analogy I use is if in school they're teaching my son about Florence Nightingale, at home I'm teaching him about Mary Seacole, right? So I counteract everything. I'll give you one more example, right? He did a whole term on the Romans. The Romans were a great warrior race, no matter what your opinion, right? So what did I do? I asked my son, who beat the Romans, though? The great Romans. Do you know who beat them? Hannibal of Carthage. Who's that? Okay, Carthage is near Tunisia and Africa. Okay, let's watch a YouTube on Hannibal, a documentary. Let me write some questions about Hannibal. I wanted to answer them. So now in his mind, Roman was a great nation like taught in school, but my daddy taught me that Hannibal of Carthage and African beat the great Romans with African war elements over the Himalayas. So that's the kind of education and things that I instill into my son personally. I do not rely on the school solely to educate my son.
Yeah, in that perspective, I can put something to that, in that if we have a bit of food or thought, like if we go to even to the facts of the Romans, the one thing that we knew about the Romans is that when they conquered any form of country, they would take the firstborn of every child. And what would they do? They would take that firstborn of that child to Rome, let them learn the Roman way, and take them back to wherever they came from. Now, what do we do today? We take our children, put them into the institutions, which is the American system or the British system or UK system, and let them learn the British or American way without giving them no sense of culture. What do you expect? So, Florence, if you had a form of solution, what would you give to the general public?
I think it would be going back to basics. It has to start in the home, and I endorse what Brother KHONSU says, what you've said as well, and that's what I was saying at the beginning. It's all about identity, letting the child know that they're loved and explaining to them what it is that they need to know, because when they go out there in society, they will need to know how to stand on their own 2 feet and how to navigate that system. So it's always, I mean, I've got loads of books in my home. People come to my home and say, oh, have you read all those books? But, you know, there's a subject on everything here. And it's important that we do educate our children and let them know their history. And I think when the sister asked me before, what is it that I would do in a classroom? I would like to have a nature lesson, and definitely a history lesson, and definitely a music lesson, and definitely a meditation lesson.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
B2, are you there? B2.
Yeah, I'm here, brother. I'm here.
If you had some form of solution or understanding of what you've learned today and what you know previously, what would you say to the general public?
I think, like, okay. So I think in terms of like educating young people, and I think there's a bit of a disconnect between the elders and the young people. I think part of that disconnect is because whilst our advice sounds right, like children are aware most times of the right thing to say, but they find difficulty in applying that in real life context. And I think the limitations of the elders, they shine in the face of authority. Do you get what I'm saying? And that presents a conflict for a young person living in the real world, where they're having to manage conflict and being restricted in terms of their expression. I think we have to begin to not only tell our children what to do, but show them. We have to embody those examples and be prepared to live it and demonstrate what we're saying. Do you know what I'm saying? A lot of the time we can talk a very strong talk within the confines of our home, but then in the face of authority, the child sees our elders having to sort of, you know, be complacent in ways. And I feel this doesn't help because they've got a sort of a type of fire in them. They don't want to be complacent. I don't know. I think really it's just trying to be the example that we're talking of. You know what I'm saying? It's one thing to say it, but we need to show our young people how to embody that in real life. Okay.
George Bacon. George.
I'm here. I think that he hit it on the head. Just think, if we all knew that we was all going to die next week, everybody on this panel and the people that's out there listening, what do we have to leave to our children? What are they inheriting from us? That's the bottom line. So the whole thing is, if we're not in control of our own economics, we don't get to dictate how our communities go, and then you get what you get. So, and that's just the whole thing in a nutshell. Like, we got to be in ownership of our communities where we can dictate. I'm a firm believer that we got to have Black women teaching our children and not white women that understand the culture, that understand the children that come out of her. She should be teaching our children while we out making things happen and creating things. If we ain't got that, if we ain't passing that down to the children, then we failed them. Bottom line, period. If we knew we was going to die next week, right now, as we having this conversation, what are we leaving the Black children in the diaspora? That's the question we should be asking ourselves. I'll rest on that. I ain't got to say nothing else.
Okay. Manning?
Yes.
Yeah, if you had your formal solution, how would you perceive it and how would you say it to the general public?
I would feel my opinion would be the best course of action would be for parent involvement. Parents need to be on committees. Parents need to be volunteers within the schools. Parents, teachers, and parents need to work collaboratively together. And I think that the schools should offer, or maybe there's some sort of like parenting classes, coaching, and so forth, and as well for teachers as well, constant professional development. I think that if the schools are located in our communities, it's not lost. I think we can get back our communities. I think it's just a matter of the same way our minds have been transformed. You know, people within our community, the same can happen for them. And when we start to utilize the word community and we start to push community, and the school has a standard of what's acceptable in the community, then things will change. So I think it's more of changing the lingo, changing the standard, and that to me can come from more parent involvement and them putting their foot down.
Mm-hmm. Rich, brother Rich. Brother Rich. And your overall understanding of what we have spoken today and heard from everybody, give us your stances on it, and what would you feel from that? Your kind of solutions from your stances.
We got to take responsibility for our children. There has to be a cultural underlay, but on a simple one, we have to have a better relationship with our kids. And in order to do that, we need to understand our own individual realities. You know, we know as a collective we're under pressure, but we're all under pressure in different ways. So you have to analyze that, and whether it's positive or negative, when you're looking at your child, you have to understand that they are product of their environment, which you are creating. Yeah, or not, if you're handing it off to someone else to do. But again, you're responsible for what you're seeing before you. So that's my biggest solution point right now, is strengthen your relationships and bonds with your kids. Try to talk to them and let them know they're going to live their own life. They're going to make their own decisions. But the one thing I try to do with my kids, or I always say, you know, there's no scenario that my children won't know what I think about them doing in that scenario, whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, we've had the conversation, we've spoken about it, so they know where I stand. Try to strengthen your relationships with your kids, family, your immediate nucleus family, because that's where it all starts. And if you can strengthen your value system at home, strengthen your moral system at home, strengthen your cultural education at home, then it can only have positive effects and more reaffirming effects when your child leaves the house. So that's my big thing.
Okay.
Big up to everybody that's come on the show so far. It's going to close us out. But it's been a pleasure for everyone who joined us in the chat. But
let me just finish my stances before you go down that way, because I just wanted to say overall, is that what we've heard, what we've listened, I hope you have jotted down and able to understand most of all the information that we've given you from Black Eyes TV 7. And I just want to say this, you know, it's the year of the African, meaning Trinity, meaning family. It's about taking action now. We've done a lot of the talking. We've got these solutions, because don't tell me you haven't got the solutions, because the solutions are in your hands. Don't be in fear of taking action, because this time, as we've got this internet, it is vast and broad. We have ideas. It's unifying them ideas for us to able to move forward. And for us to able to move forward is to actually take action. This year is about taking action. You've heard what people say in different aspects. You've heard the rites of passage. You've heard the schools. You've heard the laws. You've heard everything. But think about this. Do you want to have a legacy? Would you like your children to have a comfortable life in the future? Would you like to have your legacy pass through your children? Not someone else's legacy, but your own. Just look about 5 generations back. Can you remember your great-great-great-grandfather's first name. I used to say this every year. Not a lot of people can. So if you want to be remembered and keep that legacy going on, it's about you taking that action for your children by putting that foundation of that legacy. This is Black Eyes TV 7. Brother Rich, you can take it away.
No doubt. That was, yeah, nice closer. Big up to the chat. Big up to everyone who's tuned in. Big up to my Trinidad brethren who tuned in today. Big up to all the stateside people that's coming. Shout out to Rebel, yeah, from Ancient Chemistry. We need to talk, brother. Share this
like
show
this.
out.
And I always say, as I always said, you know, Rich, be black, buy black, spend black, develop your paradigm black. That's all.
Appreciate it. Peace, people.